Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit. Welcome to Roll for Crit. You're watching some more of our Gen Con online coverage away from Gen Con. And right now we are talking to Cherry Picked Games. We've got Alex Jerabek, the creative director at Cherry Picked Games, along with Jake Breish, the art director. And we're excited to talk to both of you specifically about your most recent game, Far Away, which we reviewed and really enjoyed a lot. And to start off with, why don't we just jump off from there? If anybody isn't familiar with Far Away, could you give us kind of a summary of what the game is about?
Yeah, Far Away is a two-player cooperative game about exploring alien worlds. You and your partner are working for the Federation Alliance, a space government that is equally ambitious as it is underfunded. So they send you on these missions without things like landing gear or medical equipment or radios. The latter of which makes a key mechanic in the game, in which when you're in separate hexes in the world, you and your partner cannot communicate in real life. And this helps reinforce the crushing loneliness of being the only two humans for light years.
It's a very unique game, I would say. I think it's not one that quite lends itself to, it's hard to just say, oh, it's a worker placement or it's a drafting game or something like that. Is there like kind of an elevator pitch in terms of genre that you try to put it into?
Yeah, that's tough. And Jake can correct me about this. It's somewhat of a exploration game, kind of 4X-y, but without the exterminate part of it. So yeah, it's got exploration elements, but it's also got this role-playing part to it with the creatures. So their movement is a little bit more flexible, a little bit more RPG-like, and what you want them to do is kind of how they act. There are some parameters to control them, but it makes for a more freeform, a more emergent ecosystem.
Jake, do you agree?
Yeah,
or will you disagree?
I agree. I usually tell people it's kind of a sandbox sort of game where it really lends itself to kind of a modular mission sort of style of gameplay, which is actually really fun to design for because it just leaves so many options open and every game is so different.
Luckily, the rules of being on different hexes, we can still talk, because if we had that rule right now, we wouldn't be able to do this interview. But I'm curious, though, where did you get the inspiration for these kinds of ideas of not talking with each other on the hexes, or even how you're not really role-playing the players, but the animals themselves?
I think the inspiration for not talking is twofold. There's a mechanical need for it. I know playing games like Pandemic and other cooperative games, there's that quarterbacking aspect where one player will just dominate the conversation. So by forcing you to trust your partner when they're away, by saying all right, we can plan all we want, but if things go awry, you're on your own. You got to figure out your own problem. Don't get chomped. So there's that. But again, we wanted that thematic thing. We wanted you to feel that isolation and that loneliness. And then the catharsis of coming back together with your partner.
Yeah, I feel with a lot of cherry pick games, we try to play. It's almost like you're playing more with the people than you are with the actual game. So I think that plays a lot into that aspect of Far Away as well, where it's more of an experience with another person than really a component of the game.
For sure, I think that's something that is our philosophy. Is the most important component of a board game is the player. And if you don't take advantage of that, then it's lost. If you can do something better in a video game, then, why is it a board game?
I think we've had that thought about several board games that we've played before. I won't name any names right now, but yeah, and I think that the social aspect, of course, is very important, and that absolutely comes across in all of the games that Cherry Picked has put out. Right now, of course, we're the social aspect. It's hard to come by. People are kind of separated, and I know that's been kind of a challenge for you guys. I think in the marketing and trying to get the word out of this game, right?
Yeah, to say the least. we not only got the production delayed because Corona was very, like there was a lot of the shutdown during January timeframe when the game was getting manufactured. And then we had to deal with like a port delay importing it. Game sat around in the Seattle port for a month while the quarantine was in effect. And then, all our in-store demos and conventions kind of fell through for good reason. Like, we don't want to go to a store right now either. But it's been tough. It's been tough to try to like get people out there and exposed to it because games are such a like inherently, for lack of a better word, viral experience. You gotta sit down and play. You gotta like, how do you know if you like it? You can watch videos, and I think the stuff you do is great to expose people that wouldn't like outside of our little Seattle community so they can learn about it. But it's if you can't go to your local game store and see it and touch the pieces, how do you gotta make a judgment call.
I mean, we've done plenty of gaming online to either reviews or even just play some games, and there are plenty of times where just like, man, this would be so much different if I could actually reach into the bag of tokens to pull something out. It's something, and then when you have a game like this, where really the people at the table matter. You're not just playing your own little solo game and who can finish their solo game first. It really is different, and it's a shame because sometimes you still get that feeling. I know when you come together, you can talk again. Sometimes it's not about strategizing. It's just like, oh my God, you were so lucky on that roll, or something like that.
Yeah, how was it for the two of you in terms of even just in your regular lives? But now it's hard to play this game. Are you used to designing together? Are you working on any other designs right now remotely? And has that made that side of things more challenging?
I'll let Jake talk to this too, but I mean, we've been, we haven't collaborated hardly at all since this happened because it was very much we'd sit in a room together. Jake and I have the same favorite band, Dance Gavin Dance. So it's like, you put that on, and we like the Faraway's world was conceived in like an afternoon where we just sat down and we're like, let's reverse engineer this universe. Like, okay, how does the ecosystem work? How does the plate tectonics of this planet work to get the things we need, and so forth. So it's, I don't know, it's just that like human connection is harder to do. What do you think, Jake?
It's definitely a different landscape right now because you don't have those organic conversations you get when you're just sitting in a room with one another. You always have these kind of scheduled calls. If we are collaborating, it's like, okay, we're going to get together, we're going to talk about this, and it's less organic. You don't get the same kind of just shooting the breeze with a friend sort of conversations. So it is a lot different in that regard. But when I feel like through the development, we would meet like once or twice a week and then kind of split up and do our own thing throughout the week. So from that regard, it hasn't changed too much. But it is a different sort of process, and it has taken some getting used to.
For sure. I think one other thing is like prototyping. When you're early on in game design, you're using sticky notes and like weird little pieces and stuff of handwriting on them. And that, is harder to translate over a camera. Like it's hard to read a card that has like my chicken scratch on it.
It's still hard to read some cards over a camera. Trust us.
Hopefully ours are okay.
Oh yeah. And speaking of some of those cards and the design process, one of my favorite parts, obviously, of this game is the animals, because I always loved watching Discovery Channel when they had the like, what if we looked at animals, 50,000 years in the future?
Yeah.
Did you design these by first, like, all right, here are some cool art designs of animals. What would it be? Or would you like, we have a predator that does this. What would that predator look like? Like, how did the evolution, pun sort of intended there, of the animals occur?
A+ pun. Good job. I don't know, Jake, you drew them all. So
yeah, sure. So for some of them, we did come up with just kind of cool aliens that we liked. But once we kind of had our base set, from there we figured out what the universe needed. So we kind of thought of, okay, so how do we come up, how do you make a universe with creatures in it, and how do you make it all make sense? Because it's an alien world, so it has to be weird, but it also has to be familiar enough that it's a tree, or or something that acts as a tree. So it was a tricky sort of approach, but we kind of figured, what does this creature eat? Does it eat other animals? What other animals does it eat? Does it have to run fast to catch them? Does it, what does this creature need? So we kind of went at it from both ways.
Yeah, like one of the details that is, I think, never said anywhere is the plant life in this universe. Instead of having photosynthesis through like chlorophyll, or the plants and trees have these organs. They're like the glowing little parts of the plant in the card, or the hexes. And so we figured, like, okay, these are these weird, like, sugar rich, like, orbs that herbivores would love to eat. So yeah, like, how do the creatures adapt to eat them? How do the trees adapt? Like, so we figured the ones lower to the ground have some sort of shell on them, and so some of the creatures have like hammer kind of heads to bash them open and eat. Some have longer necks to reach the top stuff. So the little details like that kind of ended up fueling, the alien bits on the creatures. We should also mention that about 12 of the creatures were Kickstarter requests. We had a tier that was like, add a creature. And so there's several that are named after people's dogs. One after pet duck, the fuzz buttus. So
yeah, it's pretty duck-like.
Now, before they had their names, though, because I know when we were playing the games, we'd all be like, all right, a koala bear's there, armadillo mole's over there.
Right, we came up with nicknames because we
had a big debate about whether we should use like the really poorly translated Latin we did. We'd like to think the Federation Alliance doesn't have the budget for a real translator, so they use Google. Like, we debated between that or having like English names, or I think even one iteration we just had a blank line and we expected players to write it in, but. Then because I know internally we call it like the Domina Solis is the murder beast.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to keep track of it. And there are, how many creatures are there?
Oh, there are 32 core creatures, and there's 3 mission specific ones.
Okay, it's a lot. It's impressive what you did. But sorry, I cut you off, Jake. You're about to say something.
Oh, it's okay. Let's just continue. I lost my train of thought anyways.
All right, that's Murder Beast.
we always get distracted by Murder Beast. But yeah, no, it's the number of them and how different they all feel, but also it's really impressive, I think, from playing it, that they all feel very I don't know if natural is the word that I'm looking for. They feel like they could exist. They feel like things that would have developed on some other planet, and not just just like some crazy hodgepodge of parts. Yeah,
Jonathan, I actually think that comes from the players, because we're starting to think
we did it.
How do we, like, when the players sit down and see these creatures, like, how would a large predator deal with a herd creature? Would it go for the kill? Is it going to wait until it gets one alone? You start thinking, like, that's what you had the fun with these creatures, because you think, like, what are their real life analogies, which then makes the world more livable, which means you're then feeling like you're actually on the planet more. It's sort of this positive feedback loop.
Yeah. Did you ever design parts of them with the intention of maybe, guiding people, like, this is supposed to be a predator, so it has sharper teeth? I mean, some of that stuff probably is obvious, but yeah.
I think we definitely did take that into account, and I think I also threw things in to kind of mislead people as well. Some creatures have like 2 heads or 2 mouths, so you kind of don't know which end is what, so we kind of did all sorts of things to make the creatures interesting, and kind of spark that inspiration of what do you think this creature would behave like? Do
you have a favorite?
Oh, man, That is a good
That is a
question.
tough one.
I like the Amantis arbicella. It's like this giant tree eater. It's like described as a gentle tree eater that is easily startled into a rampage state. So it's mostly harmless, but it can destroy buildings. So like if something happens where it gets spooked, it's gonna like trample all over your crash site.
We had another creature that had something like that. It might have been.
I
The same
think-
thing. We
yeah,
called it the boar. I think is what we called it.
or sometimes like a pig bear or a
Yeah, because
like
you tamed it, Jonathan. So you were writing it.
yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff in there. And thinking about the game, also, of course, it has this mission structure to it. Was there ever any thought to going even deeper in that direction and making this a legacy game?
Yeah.
Or
We never wanted an explicit legacy game. So we have like some legacy light elements in the game where you can, you have a little tracker of how much money you've made over missions, and you can get little upgrades to affect the next one, or you shuffle in previously mission specific cards into like certain decks if you complete like sub goals of a mission. Like, I believe offhand, if you complete mission 1 contingency B, you unlock the murder turret, which murder is an acronym for something. I forget what offhand. I think it's railgun is one of the words. But you can, so we wanted that like effect, like your actions sort of mattered, but I never wanted like the stickers and torn up cards kind of part of a legacy game. Partially because it's harder to share with new people. Like, if you can't replay mission 1 with a new group, it loses something in my mind, at least. You have to like stick with it. We did have thoughts though, of making a more like campaign-driven approach. Like the missions can be played in any order. We did think of having like an overarching structure, but it's just time and budget. Actually, Jake, you want to talk about the mission we cut?
Yeah, my favorite idea for a mission was a mission that was entirely to be determined. Like the Federation Alliance hadn't even finished the mission, so as you kind of go through it, they're kind of figuring it out as you go. So they're kind of like, just head to that planet, and then you'll figure it out. We'll send you the next step later. Don't worry about it. But as thematically, we didn't get to that mission, so it's still to be determined.
Yeah.
Something for the sequel, maybe?
Some expansion.
Farther away.
Farther. Slightly left.
Yeah, that makes sense. That sounds good. Yeah, you mentioned acronyms. Was there like did you have just sessions each day where you would brainstorm acronyms and what they stood for? Because there's a lot of them in this game.
Yeah, I think it started with HEX, which is a heuristically explorable xenoterrain.
Naturally.
Yeah, I mean, deterministic interaction evaluators. Cards are conceptual or actual reference designators. We didn't have it was just like as we needed them, we filled them in, because like we were deliberate that the game like manual never references a like game thing. Like there's no like it's entirely in universe. With the concession that there are things called like capital hexes.
Yeah, they're totally unnecessary acronyms, but we just had so much fun making them. And I think to Alex's point, we came up with them kind of as we needed them. I think one of the last ones we came up with was box, because we had to then kind of talk about using the box in the instructions. So.
Well, yeah, it makes for a very immersive play session, and even just reading the rule book, like you said, it feels like you are reading this another world manual, and there's a great sense of humor throughout the game. Is that something too that was intentional, or is it more like just naturally the way that your minds work that it ended up being funny?
Well, it's partially just natural. Like I think Jake and I don't take anything too seriously. Like it's one of our core tenets of Cherry Pick to be cheeky. So like everything's got this like sarcastic bite to it of yeah, the Federation doesn't have any money. It's cheaper to just send a replacement crew than it is to actually like help you. It's just you can take some satire in there, like the reason the Federation is probably underfunded is because the current administration doesn't want to admit that it's a successful program, and so they're going to prove it isn't by giving it no money. Stuff like that. I don't know. It also, like, we found that humor is necessary to make more serious themes pop. Like it, you can't have this catharsis of like being alone and coming back together and have the joyous reunite moments where you're like high-fiving or hugging depending on whether it's COVID or not, without like this kind of dumb sense of humor in the background. Like you've got to make people laugh to have the serious moments land, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think that's true, and it works out that way, and also just naturally, I think so many people are inclined to make jokes when they're playing games, right? Everyone, no one, does anyone really take games? Well, yeah, I guess at like some tournaments for certain games, people take it seriously.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the story game community that we kind of got involved with during making Conspire, which is a previous title. It's a hidden role story game. Think like Werewolf meets Microscope. Like there are a lot of games in that genre that are very serious. Like Bluebeard's Bride is about abuse and overcoming that and channeling that through different personas. Like it's a heavy game. Dog Eat Dog is about colonialism and assimilation. Like those are super heavy games with very dark themes that are good to explore, and it's an interesting medium to do it through. It's hard for me personally to not turn everything into a joke. So it's hard to like. So I wanted that to be very clear in our games. Of like, yeah, it's meant to be funny. It's meant like, don't take everything super seriously. Like, the conspiracy game. Don't make it weird and too real.
Stop sending us conspiracy theories, please. Stop posting it to our
We should
Facebook.
subreddit about that.
on that note, though, while the world is pretty funny, certainly the design of the art and everything has a very realistic style to it. Was there ever any consideration of making it more on the cartoonish side?
I don't think we really considered making it more cartoony. We always kind of wanted it to be a pretty like immersive alien world, and the reason why the creatures are sketches rather than kind of fully rendered images is because we wanted it to feel like you were discovering these things, and you're also kind of, as the player, filling in, what does this creature look like when I first looked at him through this hex, and maybe I'm climbing through the swamp and I find this creature. We kind of wanted to give you enough realism to feel like you were there, but also leave enough gaps that you could create it on your own as a player, and to kind of discover it in your own way.
We also really wanted to set up a contrast between like the nature of the world and like the things you're putting on top of it, the buildings and the other cards. So like there is a stark contrast between like what you built and what was there. I don't know if that's a message or saying something, but if nothing else, it helps you read what you need to like look at more directly. There's that little bit of design aspect of it.
You brought up Conspire, and there is and we also said that there's kind of a through line, I think, of social aspects of your games. But outside of that, you've really kind of like run the gamut of genres in the tabletop world. You started with role playing, straight up full on role playing. You have a drinking party game. Is it like, are you intentionally moving through some kind of process? Is it just you roll a die that morning and just say, what should we design today?
Gamifying game design. I think it's just what we want at the moment. Like our game is so influenced by what we feel is missing and what we want to play at the time. Like Drink came about because I had to go to a housewarming party for a person I was dating at the time, and didn't know anyone, needed an icebreaker. So like I scrawled some things on like business cards at 4 a.m, and that was the genesis of Drink. Whereas like Far Away, it was very much I wanted something to play with one other person that like was cooperative. It had some depth to it, so you could actually sit down and play a game for 2 hours, and it wasn't like this competitive cat fight. Because I know every game I play with my partner, one of us is slightly better at. It becomes less fun to play those games over time. Like I don't want to lose at Jaipur anymore.
That just reminded me of one of the times we were playing the Drink, and you were house sitting, Jonathan, and you had it to tell us to drink anytime we looked at the ground, and there was no table there, so we're all lying on the ground.
We were playing on the floor, and it was drink every time you look at the floor.
So it was just, we were like so confused. Like, why does he keep telling us? What are we doing? Is it laying down? Is it like, it was just.
They were starting to get real mad at me. But yeah, that was a fun experience. Well, we're huge fans of Far Away. It's definitely one of our favorite games of the year so far.
Awesome.
And in general, I feel like we've said this before maybe, but Cherry Pick Games, I think you guys are a company that is like too under the radar. I think more people, I hope that's not like an insult, but I think more people, like I wish more people were aware of those games. And I feel like Far Away, maybe it's unfortunate it came out at this time, but it deserves to be kind of a breakout hit, I think. I think it really transcends like social, if you're like storytelling or role playing or more traditional board games. It's a game that so many kinds of people would enjoy.
It also hits a little close to home with all the isolation.
Yeah, a game about the dangers of social distancing. The second mission involves curing a virus.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's not an insult or anything, and I think just the nature of this hobby and being in the kind of indie space it's harder to get those breakouts. It's harder to like separate from everything else that's going on, because there's a lot of cool stuff going out there, and it's not necessarily this pure merit-based thing for exposure. The other thing, like our first couple games were done while I was working as a tour guide, and Far Away was done while I was working as a writer at a tech company, and boy, the budget difference for our videos is noticeable. The marketing stuff, it was no longer a decision that weighed on me to spend $100 to submit to some like conference. Like it was no longer this existential battle of like okay, I'll pull the spreadsheet, how much money do I have to sell to like justify going down to San Francisco, like and this nightmare thing. Now it can be let's do it, and if I lose a couple $100, I can eat still.
Yeah, that's a plus. It's nice to have that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an unfortunate part of the hobby is that like it's the startup costs and the costs around not just making a game, but around the money that goes to Kickstarter, the website fees, the social media like cost, both in time and often money.
Kickstarter is great. I'm glad that we have it, but it's still it's tough to do stuff in the industry unless you're there's only a few of those like real solid board game giants that you can actually like have as a day job, like go work there. but part of that, there must be like a positive side too to that. I think you have some of that indie spirit, right? That's kind of fun. You're a little more free.
Oh, for sure. Like I don't want to like
oh no, and you weren't.
It is great to have creative control. It really, like, the only thing that matters are the people who are playing the game, and you can really focus on them, and you can tailor the experience more to hit higher highs for certain people than like a baseline it's fine kind of experience, which I think is indicative of a lot of our games. Like they're not for everyone, and I think that was the biggest realization as a game designer, was like, if you make a game for everyone, it won't be like anyone's favorite. But if you make a game for a particular like target, something that you identify with, I understand, like two-player co-op. Like I knew what I wanted out of that, and yeah, it just people can get more out of the game for them. I'm sure like you both have favorites that are against the grain, like they don't map particularly to BGG's top 10.
We all know the real best dinosaur game out there, Jonathan.
Yeah, is Dino Hunt from Steve Jackson Games.
Oh yeah, you know it.
That's Will's favorite. But yeah, I always have liked the idea that, particularly even in all media, in any kind of art, I guess, that sometimes the more specific it is, the more broad reaching it actually turns out to be. And just like you said, if you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, my favorite video game of all time is Arcanum. It's this 2000 era, like isometric RPG that is so buggy and so unplayable without like the fan made patch. But it is just this beautiful story of like Victorian era Tolkien races and weird steampunk ethos and a cool leveling. It's a great game that I don't know if I should tell anyone to play in 2020.
Well, maybe instead you can just try to get the rights for it to make a board game for it.
Oh yeah, I mean Shrek has been out for a long time. Yeah,
I'm writing these down. Arcanum and it was Dance Gavin Dance.
Dance. Yeah, I think their album's #1 on Billboard right now.
Oh, that shows how aware I am of the world around me.
I am not good when it comes to music. I do not know what's considered hip with the kids.
Well, I don't know if this is hip either. I mean, it's like post screamo.
It's a very divisive sort of genre. You either like it or you don't. So
yeah, I mean, if you like the idea of pseudo nonsensical lyrics being screamed while a pretty boy sings some high notes over the guitar, boy, is that the band for you.
Well, before we let you go, do either of you have maybe a tease of what you might be working on next, or if you just want to, it doesn't have to be cherry picked games, recommend some other board games people maybe want to look forward to or check out that are hot right now in your world?
Jake, you got anything? I'll close off with the CVG game, but
I mean, I don't have anything like niche or anything super mainstream, but I've really been enjoying Sagrada at my house during quarantine, so it's a nice game to pass the time.
I mean, I bought Gloomhaven right before the quarantine, so my fiance and I have been playing that. I've probably played like 60 plus games, and I still don't know whether I like the game or not.
Be careful. We've already drawn enough ire for our thoughts on it.
I'll shut my mouth and then. But I'm trying to think of like other indie things I've been playing, but I mean, yeah, like not being able to go to conventions has made that hard.
It makes it tough.
Yeah.
I got halfway through King's Dilemma before quarantine, and I am chomping at the bit to get my group back.
Oh, we're in the same boat there.
Same exact position, yeah.
So good. So I think the next thing we're working on, and we've teased a little bit of art about this, but we're working on a game that revolves around being in a dog-friendly bar. And we're hoping this isn't a purely Seattle concept, but like a dog bar, and you're competitively trying to pet dogs. You're trying to have the best experience petting dogs of the other patrons. So you're going to run around, and there's a little bit more to it of like how you can do that and like some set collection mechanics. But one of the core things that we've established so far is because you can't be in a bar without a drink. If the staff ever catches you without one, they shame you, and you have to pick up a shame token. So it's really, the game is really about like, yeah, trying to pet these dogs without like have everyone look at you funny.
That sounds amazing, and I'm all in. Petting dogs, absolutely. I will say there is a restaurant. I don't know if they still have these rules now with COVID, but that had like dog treats and foods out there. So I think there are other places that are friendly to dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I worked in a brewery for a while, and because it was technically a manufacturing facility and not a bar, you could have dogs and kids. and that was just the feature of the brewery, was just dogs everywhere. Made it serving really hard. Kind of, we want to start playtesting it, but obviously there's the thing that prevents easily doing that. But yeah, we're aiming for a high player count, quick play time kind of thing. So, the opposite of far away. Going to our team of never doing the same thing again.
Well, thank you both for joining us. And if anyone out there isn't convinced, go play Far Away, or at least watch our review of it and learn more about it in depth there too. But it's an extremely solid game. Highly recommended. And it was awesome that you guys took the time to chat with us about it, because it's a really, like we said, really unique game. And there's still, I still have questions about how things work and where they came from, but we'll save it for another chat.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, have a great rest of virtual Gen Con.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, how's our virtual Gen Con going? We'll pretend that it's happening right now while we're filming this.
Live interview.
Yep, that's right.
My mic drops for a while.
We got to get back to playing all the new demos. So, thank you so much, and everybody have a great rest of your day. And this has been Roll for Crit.
Thanks to all our members of our Patreon page for making this show possible. You can sign up for exclusive benefits or help us by liking and subscribing.
You can also take a quick survey to help us improve Roll for Crit, and in exchange, you'll receive access to a Patreon exclusive podcast episode. Stay up to date on all our Gen Con online coverage, including live gameplay at rollforcrit.com.